much for giving up your mornings and speaking. So why Maidan? And you know, we decided when we first started this 6 years ago, and I think the lady who actually started Maidan is a lady called Alka Shesha. I don't know if she's here now today, and she'll probably be in here later if not, but she is a student actually now at Bombay University, but used to be. So that was how hard it was to get people to buy into it. But it's really important, you know, 17 years later and 6 years after we started Maidan, to create this platform, this agnostic platform, which is for people to come together and share best practice, to share new ideas of innovations about what's happening, but most importantly, to help validate why we're all doing what we do. Because we know it changes lives. We have some empirical data to prove that, but it is about creating a movement of people who are able to convince the world that this is a viable and an effective way of intervening with young people. So today's conversation is about the convergence of education and livelihood. And I think, you know, it's a crucial conversation to have. You know, we in India are on the verge of something quite catastrophic, and it's something we don't often talk about in this country. I believe that's because layered with this, unfortunately it doesn't stop there, layered with this is we have, so once we provide this law, once we provide this infrastructure, we have this growing issue of creating a generation of young Indians who have aspiration levels off the charts. 900 million telephones, 300 million TV sets, access to internet, means we have a generation of people, as I said, that really don't have any understanding of some of the opportunities and contextually realizing their place in those. And this is where we all play a part. Because I believe sport and sport for development has an absolute linchpin, critical impact in the ability of creating belief in a young person that they can move from poverty. I think we have 400,000 children at Magic Bus. I think the most important thing we do is give a young person the belief that they don't have to be poor. What we also do, crucially, is we provide the aspirational measure in a young person's life. This is what sport can do extremely well, and I don't think any other platform can do it so well.
Mr. Matthew Spacey, the brain and energy behind Magic Bus, all the work which Magic Bus is doing, and probably known not only in India but across the globe, is the ideas and energy which he infuses into this. Professor Vasanthi, the co-host of this event, Ms. Deepa Krishnan, a well-known entrepreneur and educator, Mr. Jayendra Stogi, other dignitaries, Bharat. So I'm really privileged to be here in front of you to represent the Tata Institute of Social Sciences for this extremely interesting, innovative, I would say innovative program called Maidan Summit. I think the values, the practices and the ideas of sports, when it is converged with the actions for development, I don't think there can be a better way of combination of things which can significantly transform the lives of people whom we are trying to address, the young of this country. Actually, as much as I understand the Magic Bus work, sports is not considered as just as a tool of mobilizing youth or the young, but also the strong belief that we can bring the young and make them participate in the entire discourse on development and make them participate. And if sports can be a cause for it, there is nothing like it. So I think making sports as an extremely interesting avenue for young people to integrate into the development process is something which is an extremely interesting idea. I found the title which have been put for this conference, this event, Converging Education and Livelihood Spaces Through Scalable Innovations. I'm finding two very interesting ideas, education and livelihood spaces, converging these two, and scalable innovations. I feel, education, there has been enough talked about how education needs to be catering to the livelihoods and thereby enhancing potentials and opportunities for the young. There is no dearth of knowledge, there is no dearth of research on this. But education has much more to do with probably the lives of people, especially looking at the emancipation than just providing livelihoods. Probably not for the society. If we are able to do that, I think we will be able to achieve much greater pace of development. I'll come back to Oscar Wilde. He says, he wrote, "Do not educate children to be rich. Educate them to be happy and engaging in various actions which defines their life and potentials." I think that is going to make significant changes. We do not want people, the children to be educated to be rich, and that's exactly what
Mumbai. I would like to brief about University of Mumbai, which has established in 18th July 1857, almost 159 years ago. The profile of this university carved out in 159 years of its functioning attests to manifold achievements as the intellectual and moral powerhouse of the society. The university has always given its best to the country in general and to the city of Mumbai in particular by enthusiastically shouldering an overgrowing load of social values and opportunities. Initially, the university concentrated its efforts on controlling teaching at the undergraduate level and in conducting examinations. Later on, it took up research and task of imparting instructions of post-graduation courses. It has two main campuses at Vidyanagari and Fort. Also, the sub-centers at Ratnagiri, Thane and Kalyan with 60 university departments and institutes. There are 749 colleges have been affiliated under University of Mumbai. It has established its name in industrial and international collaborations and runs various professional courses. At national level, it has excelled in sports, cultural and outreach activities.
National integration by the Maharana of Mewar Foundation. In 2014, he was named on the prestigious Executive Council of the Union Ministry of Home Affairs' National Foundation for Communal Harmony. 11 years, retiring from the Indian team only in 2009. A prolific speaker, he has lectured on leadership, gender equality and Indian cinema at Oxford Festival, where eminent personalities like Satyajit Ray himself and Govind Nahalani have also spoken on the same subject. So we're really lucky to have him here with us the whole morning. Thank you.
Thank you for that fulsome and very embarrassing introduction. No, Satyajit Ray didn't speak at his own memorial lecture. That would have been a feat in supernatural with Shyam Benegal. The good thing about sitting and listening to people talk for 1 hour, 10 minutes is that you get to watch everybody in the audience. And I really envy a few people who have been sleeping so soundly. You come out of the sun, come into a nice, cool, dark room, comfortable chair, silence, which you don't get much in this country and also in this city, and then this very pleasing, pleasant drone. You require something in the background, whether it's the news, whether it's the radio, whether it's your grandmother cooking in the kitchen, the occasional whistle of the pressure cooker, or one of us speaking. I've seen, and I'm looking at all of you now, right? People who have just been sleeping so beautifully. Occasionally the mouth opens, then it shuts again. Then you realize, oh, you're somewhere. Then you pretend that you're awake, and then slowly you're again hypnotized. And you just can't. You want to stay awake and you can't, and you're being dragged down into this beautiful abyss of sleep. So please let me not disturb you. I promise not to raise my voice. I promise not to be too interesting. I'll just keep this tone the whole way through, and I hope you can catch another 80 or 120 wings. So it's a privilege being here, not because everybody says it's a privilege being here, but because it's a privilege to have Matthew as my friend. Matthew and I played rugby together 92, I think, 92, 24 years ago. 98. And yes, there were those kids from Fashion Street who used to come and wash our cars when we parked at the Wamajim Khana Club. And they were literally this high. I remember Raju was this high, and I think Anil was even smaller. And at the time, 5 rupees was a princely amount, I suppose. So I used to give them $5 only because they wasn't about the car; it was about the kids. And then I think the greatest testament to what Matthew set out to do was, if Raju was 11, 12 at the time, 10 years later, or maybe 8 years later when he was 19, and he was now playing for the Magic Bus team. Magicians? Yeah. The Magic Bus team at the Bombay Gym. And at the time he used to call me Saab, Gadi Dhona hai Saab. And 8 years later he tackled me on the field and said, Rahul, are you okay? And I said, I'm fine. See, it's not about, it's very, 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 very difficult to genuinely believe in equality. We all love to discriminate. We all love hierarchies. It's always nice to know that you're somewhere on the top of some ridiculous, obscure pile, left-handed, vegetarian, atheist. Yeah, I'm there. But to actually believe in equality, where a boy who used to clean your car can thump you, and the first thing you want to get up and say is, what the f? And then you, of course, never do that with anybody, but then you look at this boy and you say to yourself, clear-eyed, strong, confident, unapologetic, and committed to being excellent at what he's doing. I mean, that. Now, if he's going to take your place in the Indian team, how are you going to feel about that? So, I just want to put it out there because it's a privilege, Matt. You're just unfan. You're a lovely human being. You're a lovely man. And 400,000 kids are in safe hands. So I thought I'll do something that no one's done today, which is talk about the connection between sport and what it teaches you in life to move ahead. These are all personal lessons, so they might be stupendously boring, but I have to cater to the sleeping segment also. If any of you know anything about rugby, it's this game with an odd-shaped ball, and it's a game that's very physical. So even somebody who's watched it for 5 minutes will realize that it's intensely physical, and there's an intense amount of physical pressure every moment of the game. In this sport, there are 15 people playing 15 people. I'll wait for you, ma'am. You can finish. I'll wait for you. It's okay. I really will wait for you. Don't be apologetic. If it's important, take it. I'm not joking. Please. The guy must be saying, hello, hello, hello. You put the phone down in your lap. You can finish it. It's not a problem. We all live in the real world. Please, if you have a hassle, please get onto the phone and please finish your work. It's such an intensely physical sport that what happens is, to survive in the sport, you divide the game into 15 channels. And each person has a channel to look after. Literally, geographically, that's how you map it. So you have to look after your channel, and nobody else is going to do that for you. And if you think you can survive this sport doing your own thing while everybody else is looking after their channel, you will die. There's no lesser way to put it. You can actually die. And there have been many times in my early years of my career when, out of arrogance and athleticism, I thought I could go anywhere and do anything. And I've often faced grievous injury 2 feet away from me, till a body comes hurling himself between me and mad pain. And it's one of my teammates who's saving my ass at the last moment. So the first thing that this sport taught me was, in life you can do nothing alone. if you think you've done something alone, you are an absolute fool. Because you got up and you ate food cooked by someone. You got up and you put on the shower and the water had been purified by someone for you to bathe in. There's nothing that we do alone in this world. I can watch transfixed in near orgasmic joy a game of chess on TV. Golf, and I'll be chewing my nails off in excitement. That's who I am when it comes to sport. I also understand what it takes, and I hear all these commentators talking about sport and about what it's like. I'm like, you don't know what it's like. Unless you play for the country and you cross that white line, you have no clue what it's like to represent your nation. You have absolutely no idea where. It's like, I think somebody said, Alistair Cook said yesterday, nothing prepares you for England captaincy till you become England captain. It's true. Nothing prepares you to be a national and international sports person till you cross that white line. For example, did you know when you cross that white line, you lose your name? You lose your name for the next 15 days in the tournament. You lose your name. Because every single referee says, India 13, come here, don't do that again. You finish the game and you go for dinner and they say, India, table number 8 and 9. You go in the morning for practice and they say, India, ground number 3. You just don't have a name. You are only known as India. And although 6 people and a dog might know that India has a rugby team, as far as these 5,000 people are concerned in that meet in Singapore, you're India. So if you're gonna start fondling masseuses and you're gonna start stealing bathroom fixtures, that's what India is going to be known for. So you absolutely have to understand that that's the responsibility that no one prepares you for. That here, and I'm not trying to be nationalistic or jingoistic. It's just when you cross that white line, something else happens. Okay. Let's see. Yeah. So when I used to lose playing squash as a young teenager, I used to kick my squash racket about 3/4 of a kilometer till I would get to where the car was, and I would make sure the squash racket broke. And I would break a squash racket every week. And when I played rugby and I began to understand what the game was all about, I also understood one thing very clearly, that you can do your best, and that's all you can do. Winning and losing is not in your hands. And so every true sports person has understood the Gita's philosophy of being a karma yogi. Winning and losing is not in your hands. Your job is just to do. You have to get there and do. And I'll, of course, refine that in the sporting field. Say, anything you do in life, you just have to do your best. But once you do your best, let it go. Let it go, and wherever it lands in this universe is something that's not in your hands. It will relieve you of so much stress, where all you have to do is to focus on being as perfect as you can be in that job. And the rest of it, don't sweat the small stuff. A similar lesson which happened to us every evening was, one day you are there and the next day you are there, even amongst your teammates. You played well against Guam and the top table of all the stars in the team, and you were invited to come and have dinner there. And you slipped 2 tackles against the Philippines, and you ate alone or maybe with the 2 reserves who never get a game anyway. That's the way it is. Sports persons are very cut and dried. They don't like the smell of failure. They don't like to be depressed. They want to hang with people who are successful. So this is another flip side of the whole do your best and let the chips fall where they may, which is, the day you're on top, you can be sure that 2 days later you're going to be eating with the reserves. And that's just the way it's going to be. And so all you can do is to always, 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 no matter what you do, is focus on how you can get better, how you can improve. And that's the best you can do. There's a thick line between ambition and desire. Ambition says, if I do this, I'll get here. And desire says, I'll do this because I really want to do it. And there is nothing, no purchase to be gained from ambition. And many, many people, most everyone I know, mistakes and mixes the two up. Ambition is very different from desire. So if I do this film and then I get that award and then I'll get that film. And then of course, then I'll be president of the world. Versus, I just want to do this movie because I love this role and I love the director. Because 5 times out of 10, the movie won't even release. After that, if it releases, will anybody see it if it's released on 26/11? After that, and one of my movies was, and it ran for about 10 minutes. After that, even if it does get released and has people coming to see it, will people like it? So by the time you get down to where you think your ambition will take you, you've already played a losing game. Whereas desire is what sport teaches us. Today I will play my best and I will just do it because I love it. I cannot do it thinking if I do this, I'll get there, I'll get there. There is no tomorrow. It is today and it's that game. Never be afraid to do something on your own if you know it's the best, in the best interests of the team. So I remember once we were in KL, we were playing a tournament and it was a tough game. And we had 2 days off. And everybody normally would just mope around the hotel room, getting depressed. And that whole depression thing would start catching, and then the blackboard session would go off badly, and the next day's practice would be everybody snapping at each other. So I just decided to speak to the hotel, get a young guide who would take us around the city in a bus. And KL is a great place to see. So and it was like, come on, Bose, what are you getting us into a bus and going? I'm like, listen, let's just go. Let's just see. We can get off somewhere and then we can just come back. But we did the whole thing. Even if the wonderful architecture and the fantastic scenery, went over their heads, what happened was in that bus, we began to just be friends again. We began to talk. We began to just break the ice. We began to crack our normal, extremely cruel, incredibly politically incorrect jokes about each other, which I really cannot even repeat even to myself because NG or Rahul will commit suicide just listening to those jokes. So that's what happened in those 2 or 3 hours. I was never afraid to make a move on the field that wasn't discussed in the blackboard session. Because if I found there was an opening, I was going to take it. Because ultimately that's what you want to do. You want to keep moving the team forward. This is easy stuff. I've always been disciplined, but I've seen some very, very indisciplined guys on the team become very disciplined as they began to play more and more often for India. Because if you don't get to the bus at 7:29, you don't play the game. You get there at 7:31 and you're off the bus. You're off the team. Your 5 hours of day of practice for the last 14 weeks, zitch. It doesn't matter who you are. You're off the team. So if you don't wear the team t-shirt when you come down for dinner, you will not eat. You will be sent back upstairs. No one's paying for room service. So it's that idea of discipline because you know that it is going to lead to something beautiful. Not just because somebody is doing this because they have a hammer over your head. I've written here, channel your anger to focus. So there was a certain thing that we used to do, which was, I don't know whether maybe Matt doesn't remember this, but we used to, against Kazakhstan we did it, and people were wondering what the hell we were doing. This was our first test match in Bombay, and we lined up at the center line before the game. And the Kazakhis all looked like Rasputin, 6.5 feet to 7.5 feet tall. They had iron filings for teeth. None of them had cut their hair in 2 or 3 centuries. They just looked like they were going to get the ball, swallow it, and then take you, rip you apart, and use your intestines as floss. So there you were, opposite these guys, and you knew that rabies was definite. Anything else, was going to be worse. So you stood on the center line. All of us had decided to stand on the center line, and because you play in channels, we stood there and I went, that's my man, I got him. 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 And this 7-foot guy on the other side would look at this 5'6" guy going, that's my man, I got him. He's like, what is that? Like, who's this creature? But gradually, he began to understand that this was an insane person. That this is a person who had no rationale. So now, when he began to engage with us, there was this element of doubt. That maybe this guy is a young cannibal. Maybe he's a small, ferocious, feral animal from somewhere else. Who knows, And so it was like, so you immediately planted a seed of doubt in that person. So just taking your anger, or in this case, cold fear, and just focusing it into something that could take you somewhere. And sometimes it's smoke and mirrors. But we played our greatest game against Kazakhstan. They were rated, we were ranked at the time, I think, 91 or 92 out of 109 countries playing rugby, and they were rated 53, and that's a huge gap. And we, in the 80-minute game, we led them till the last 5 minutes. And because so many of us were so concussed at the end of it, we lost 32, I think 27 or something. But we were leading 27-24 till the last 5 minutes. It was an extraordinary game. I still remember the game because I got smashed and I had to have 23 stitches after that game. But it was just a, that's my man, I got you. That's my man, I got him. It was so anyway, so fear and anger. We all feel that. We all feel it all the time. We have to find the right channel for it. So this is something no Indian is going to understand, not even me, but I'm going to try. What happens is when our hearts get hot, our heads get hot. Straight up. Or when our heads get hot, our heart gets hot. I prefer the former. I mean, just a simple thing like a little scrape in traffic, and before you know it, you are cursing that person's ancestors. You are challenging them to come here, and that you will burn them alive just with your eyes, like some yogi or something. And it's like, it just goes crazy, escalates into this point where you're shaking, and you've picked up stones, and next thing you know, so. Whereas the greatest sports persons in our country, the hotter their heart gets, the cooler their head gets. Abhinav Bindra, Vishy Anand, Sachin, Geet Sethi, across all sport. The idea is that, and it has to be a trained response, is the hotter your heart gets, the more you have the passion, the anger, the desire to do something increases in ferocity, the cooler your head gets. So you can just see exactly what's going on at that moment, and nobody is going to be prepared for what's going to emerge from here. And that combination in any field of life, try this once when you feel you're getting angry. Just take a step back. Feel the reason for your anger. Keep that seated here. But just make sure that your head remains very clear. And you'll be amazed. You'll just feel like a superhero. Finally, all the horoscopes, all the amulets, all the threads, all the superstitions matter nothing. So if anybody in this room, and I'm an atheist, but that's fine, you can believe in God. But if anybody in this room believes putting your left sock over your right sock, or using this thread, or because my mother waved 3 burnt leaves over my head, if any of that you think works, please try and play sport day to day, every day. And you'll realize that sooner or later, everyone, oh, this is working for me till, God, how did that happen? Kind of thing. Nothing works. Except humility, hard work, and to try and harness as much talent as you have and use it every day of your life. I'm going to end with something that I always say in schools where I'm talking to parents, not children. Because as long as we have this feudal approach to sport, whereby, बेटे तुमने एग्जाम में अच्छा किया है, चलो जाओ आधे घंटे के लिए बैडमिंटन खेलो. वैसे नहीं, तुमने you got a D grade जो भी है, यहाँ पे बैठो, पढ़ाई करो. So sport is like a little dessert given at the end of the main course of studies. As long as we treat it like that, we're going to get nowhere. But if there has to be hope for people to start a sporting culture, I can never talk to parents and tell them things like, come on, your child will play for India one day. You can't do that, right? So I try something which is devious and slightly criminal, but I try it all the same. I tell them that, ठीक है, मैं मानता हूँ कि आप कहते हो कि academics सबसे अहम चीज़ है आपके बच्चों के लिए. ठीक है. I understand. Academics is the most important thing. Marks, they cannot live. My child cannot be fed by his rugby shoes. I get it. Why should your child play sport? 1, it's going to help your child immensely in her or his studies, because sport helps you to increase your power of concentration. So you concentrate more fiercely if you play a sport. Second, sport/sheer physical exercise enables you to work longer hours and sleep shorter hours, but your sleep will be immediate and deep. Till today, there's not a day in my life when I've ever had a problem going to sleep. That's partly because I find my own voice boring, but that's besides the point. And so I say, if your child can do with less sleep, more hours to study. If your child can concentrate fiercer, my child is really absorbing simultaneous equations, which, believe me, never works. I tried that. And finally, if your child has this ability to consistently deal with pressure about the exam tomorrow, which sport will 100% temper you for, then you have a child that can actually genuinely do far better at academics than the child could earlier. And this is something I find that goes down quite well with parents. But finally, when they ask me, even if our child gets into sport but doesn't make it, what future is there? And I'm like, I'm sure Matt's 10,000 people who speak to children have said this. But today, the amount of professions around sport is staggering. You can be a trainer of trainers. You can be a coach. You can be a physical instructor. You can be a sports medicine assistant. You can work in a gym. You can become a sports medicine specialist yourself. You can become a physiotherapist. I mean, it is just staggering the amount of jobs available if you're interested in the life around sport. So if you speak to Shamal, who's at Heel, he will tell you, he's a sports medicine, that perhaps he played competitive tennis and then decided, I can't go further, but I want to be with sport. Or Ravi Krishnan, who does stepathlon, who played competitive tennis in college in Australia and then couldn't go further with tennis and said, okay, but I still want to be in sport. So these are people who have incorporated sport into their lives, but not necessarily playing for their country. So I actually think that today, Matt, there is at least 10 to 15 professions that we can look at very carefully, looking at the educational qualification and ability of the girl or the boy, and place them in places where they'll still be very much connected with sport. There are jealousies, it's his last test match, and I'm going to now succumb to my sense of jealousy and hatred for this guy, and I'm going to spite him in a way that he'll never forget. Fine, these are things that happen. So I'm numb. It's like somebody's blasted a bomb near your ear and your eardrums just go numb. And you're seeing everybody in slow motion celebrating because we had beaten, and we were winning that game. I was the 16th strongest member of that team, but even if I was the 20th strongest, you could have played me in the last 5 minutes because we were way ahead. You didn't. And everyone's celebrating, and you're feeling awkward because you want to celebrate. And yet you don't want to celebrate. And when you don't want to celebrate, you feel guilty because you're being selfish and you're bringing the team down and you're thinking about yourself, but damn it was your last test match for the country. You thought the previous evening that you'd be carried on people's shoulders, or, you know what I mean, you'd be like dunked with beer or something celebratory and asked to make a speech or something like that. None of that's happened. So what you do is you decide to sit in the team bus, very awkward, and people, some of them are coming up and saying, Bose, sorry man, what happened? And I'm like, I don't know, don't ask me, ask the coach. And we get to the hotel, and I quickly have a shower, and I don't, normally after the end of a tournament, everybody goes and has, 456,000 beers, till 4 o'clock in the morning, wherever we are in Southern Club, and end up with stories that are too embarrassing to narrate anyway. But I don't. So I just leave, and I go to another hotel, and I keep drinking. And I drink from, it's early, the game gets over at 5, so 7:30 to 2. And I'm blitz drunk by 2 when I get a call from the boys to say, listen, come on, don't be silly. Let's meet, we are at such and such club, etc., etc. And I go there. And I meet the coach. And I ask him, I'm like, why did you do that? And he mumbles something. No, I don't know. I just got so many substitutions. And so I was like, okay, I'm not getting an answer. But that's the time I decided that I was not going to retire. So I came back to Bombay, and I wasn't young, I was 42. And I rehired my sprint coach, who had earlier worked with me maybe 6 or 7 years ago. I hired the conditioning guy who I didn't think I needed anymore. So I got a sprint coach and a conditioning coach in the off-season and worked with them. And then in the final season, and in the lead up to the 12-week lead up to the next international tournament, probables of 60, there was a fitness test in which I came 5th. I just go and try and, slaughter their pets at home or anything like that. You just say, okay, this is what happened. The world will never treat you fairly most of the time. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to become so good that you shame the world into treating you well. Thanks.
You know the problem with someone who speaks this well. And Professor Shah Jahan, Mr. Bhaskar Som, Ms. Deepa Krishnan, whom I've kept calling Deepa as if we are Chatterjees, and Professor Vasanthi.